I was raised by Jonathan Hale since I was a child. He took care of me meticulously, cherishing me like a delicate treasure, as if I was made of porcelain. Whenever someone inquired about our relationship, he would simply laugh and say he was keeping me as a pet. After rejecting my confession for the third time, he brought home the dazzlingly beautiful Mia, and told me to call her Aunt. "We're getting married soon, darling, so be sensible and don't upset your aunt." "Okay," I replied. I wisely moved out of the Hale residence, treating him as a mere elder, accepting advances from suitors, and trying to start a new life. But he wouldn't let me. The first time I met Mia was on the morning of my 22nd birthday. She was wearing Jonathan's white shirt, emerging from his bedroom, with suggestive red marks on her legs and neck. Jonathan followed, naturally embracing her, and kissing her on the lips. They stood side by side, appearing to be the perfect couple. I stared at them dumbfounded. Ever since I came to live with the Hales, Jonathan had been constantly doting on me, never allowing any other woman to get close, much less bring one home. It seemed he had truly fallen for someone else. My heart was heavy and achy. I couldn't quite describe the feeling, so I wanted to turn and escape to my room, but it was too late. Mia smiled and extended her hand to me. "You must be the little girl Jonathan raised?" "Hello, Ball, I'm Jonathan's girlfriend, Mia." "Hello," I replied stiffly, shaking her hand. I watched her nestled in Jonathan's arms and playfully complain. "It's all your fault for being so rough last night. I have no clothes to wear and was embarrassed in front of Ball." Jonathan chuckled, pinching her waist. "What's there to fear? Ball wouldn't laugh at you, right, Ball?" His familiar tone stung my heart. I didn't know how to cope with the fact that he had suddenly found someone else. I lowered my head and murmured a soft yeah, excusing myself to go to my room to wash up. When I went down for breakfast, I found Mia sitting in my usual place, using my utensils. That seat was closest to Jonathan. He had always insisted that I sit there for over 10 years. The utensils were custom-made, 2 sets, one for him and one for me, and he never allowed anyone else to use them. But Mia was the future mistress of the house. Compared to her, I was the outsider. "Ball, don't just stand there, come have breakfast," Mia invited me warmly. I thanked her and sat down, barely tasting anything I ate. Throughout the meal, Jonathan was focused on taking care of Mia. He didn't even notice my unusual behavior. Or perhaps he did but didn't care. After breakfast, Jonathan and Mia were about to leave. I stood up, wanting to ask if he had forgotten it was my birthday. But Jonathan only smiled at me. "Darling, I'm going out with your aunt. It's not convenient to bring a third wheel." I didn't mean to interrupt. "I hope you and my aunt have a good date," I explained awkwardly, unable to bring myself to say, "It's my birthday today." The car roared to life, and I was left alone in the villa. I sat at the dining table, gripping the edge of my shirt, feeling just as panicked as the day I was first brought to live with Jonathan. I was 5 years old when 13-year-old Jonathan brought me to the Hales. The reason was absurd. Jonathan liked keeping small pets but could never keep any alive. That day he saw me, and the crazy idea struck him that he could raise a person for fun. The Hale family was one of the top elite families, and my parents were eager to curry favor with them. The Hales merely sent someone to convey this idea, and they eagerly sent me to the Hales. I thought I wouldn't be able to adapt. But in reality, there was no younger brother to hit me, bite me, or steal my things, nor were there parents who favored my brother. There was only Jonathan, who spoiled me like a little princess. When I was young, he would braid my hair, buy me dresses and shoes, and feed me. Once when a kid pushed me and scraped my leg, the next day that kid was forced to transfer schools and I never saw them again. As I grew older, Jonathan would pick me up and take me to school, cook for me, and choose my clothes. He would attend my parent-teacher conferences, pack my luggage when I went out. When I was sick, he would stay by my side no matter how busy he was. When I participated in competitions or performances, he would always be there cheering for me. Once I performed at the New Year's Gala. As I came off stage, a male classmate whistled and teased me about my fair skin and long legs. When Jonathan came to give me flowers, he glanced at the guy with a smile. That same day, that classmate was attacked and taken to the hospital. His mouth was stuffed with broken glass. His parents knelt crying before Jonathan, begging him to spare their family. Jonathan, noticing me peeking, walked over and ruffled my hair. "It's late, darling, time for bed." I nodded and went to sleep, never knowing what happened to that family. Everyone said that Jonathan appeared approachable, but was aloof to everyone but me. I felt that way too. So, when I turned 18 and realized I was in love with Jonathan, I confessed directly to him. He ruffled my hair helplessly. "Darling, you're still too young. You can't tell the difference between love and dependence." When I confessed to him again at 20 and then 21, he would let me kiss him on tiptoe but wouldn't reciprocate, only pushing me away and asking with a sigh, "Can't we just be like this forever, darling?" After being rejected 3 times, I felt embarrassed and bitter. But I was never afraid or sad, because Jonathan was always special to me. I thought that sooner or later we would be together. But the moment I saw Mia this morning, it was as if I'd been slapped hard. I went to school dejectedly. It was the first time that Jonathan didn't see me off. Some female classmates in my class were chatting, one of whom said that her male childhood friend had found a girlfriend, and now she would have to keep her distance to prevent her friend's girlfriend from thinking she was up to no good. Remembering the scene of me running into Mia and Jonathan earlier that morning, my heart felt heavy. "Uncle, I have to prepare for my exams recently, so I'll be staying at school and not coming home." I'd never stayed at school in my life. Jonathan used to be too controlling. Once when I mentioned wanting to board at school, he was furious and I never brought it up again. But this time I sent the message and he didn't reply for days. It wasn't until a week later that Jonathan and Mia came to find me at school. Their attractive appearances and refined demeanor drew a lot of attention. Jonathan wore a black coat over a silver-gray suit. Even the crooked scarf I'd knitted for him didn't detract from his elegance and handsomeness. In my memories, we had never been apart for so long. My gaze lingered lovingly on his eyes, but when my eyes landed on Mia next to him, I looked away shamefully, feeling like my thoughts were inappropriate. Mia walked over, apologizing guiltily. "Ball, is it because I went on a trip and Jonathan went with me, and he didn't take care of you that made you unhappy and refused to come home? I'm sorry, we should have brought you along." So Jonathan had been traveling with his love, and that's why he hadn't replied to my message for a week? My heart ached, but I dared not show it. "I'm not angry." Mia sighed in relief. "That's good. Your uncle cares about you so much. I wouldn't want you two to have any misunderstandings because of me. Let's go home together, we can have dinner." I didn't want to go back and be a third wheel. But Jonathan smiled gently. I knew my ball was the most sensible. "Let's go, your aunt and I have bought you lots of gifts, they're all in the car." His words never allowed for argument, not even from me. The words of refusal I wanted to speak died in my throat. "Okay." We went home together, and the servants had already prepared dinner. The table was full of spicy dishes that I couldn't eat. Mia looked up at me, surprised. "Ball, are you not enjoying your meal?" Jonathan also turned to look at me, his expression indifferent. "No." I didn't want to spoil the mood, so I finished the small plate that Mia had given me. By the end, my stomach felt like it was being twisted into knots. I excused myself to get some medicine and Jonathan came over. "Is your stomach upset again? You're such a delicate little thing." He held a glass of water and some medicine, looking at me with a helpless and tender smile. So, he did remember that my stomach would get upset with spicy foods, then why were there no dishes I could eat? I took the water and medicine, hesitating. "Thank you, Uncle, you and Miss Mia. She and I will be married soon. You should call her Aunt." "Okay. What was it you wanted to say earlier, darling?" "It's nothing. I just wanted to say that you and Aunt are a good match." I wanted to ask him when he had met Mia, and when he had fallen in love with her. Before, when he rejected me, he said that if we couldn't be lovers we could be family, and that he would still treat me well. Did that no longer count? But in the end I didn't ask. No one in this world was born to be good to anyone. He was simply taking back his affection for me, and I had no right to say anything. Jonathan smiled. His smile was still as handsome as it had always been, but I didn't dare look at him so freely. Mia called out to him sweetly, asking him to get her a towel. He turned and left. I watched his bedroom door close before me, and I took my medicine, feeling like it tasted particularly bitter today. At the end of the month, Jonathan and Mia were invited to a charity gala, and they brought me along. When the chandelier fell, I was right under it, and Mia was on the edge. But Jonathan rushed over, only concerned with pulling Mia away and protecting her in his arms. I stood there dumbfounded. When the huge crystal chandelier was about to fall on me, all I saw was Jonathan's pale face, and heard screams all around me. Someone rushed over and pushed me, falling to the ground with me. I was covered in blood, in so much pain that I couldn't move. That person was in no better shape. Jonathan rushed over, his eyes filled with concern and guilt. "Ball, don't be afraid. I'll have them send you to the hospital. You'll be okay." He called a few people to take me to the hospital, while he carried Mia away to change. She wasn't hit by the chandelier, but her clothes were stained with my blood. Did he love Mia so much that in his heart, her clothes were more important than my life? Looking at Jonathan's departing figure, my heart throbbed, but I didn't even have the right to be sad. He was just worried about his love. He had not done anything wrong. I suppressed my chaotic thoughts and asked the nurses, "What about the other person who was injured by the chandelier with me?" I had to thank him. If it hadn't been for him saving me, I might have died. "He's right here." A handsome young man with a rugged face wheeled himself out, his legs and forehead wrapped in thick bandages. It was my childhood friend Ethan Reed. We grew up together and he was my only friend. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the one to put his life on the line to save me. But seeing him injured like this, I felt guilty. "Thank you, Ethan. I'm really sorry that you got hurt this badly to help me. We're friends. Am I going to stand and watch you die? Besides, there's no need to feel bad. I'm all bandaged up on purpose, but I only got a scratch on my forehead. And keep it to yourself. My family is driving me crazy to get married, so I'm using the hospital as an excuse to hide." Ethan wheeled himself to my bedside, whispering and constantly glancing at the door. For the next couple of weeks, his parents and sister visited him, and he would groan in bed. As soon as his family left, he would grab the food they brought and come to my room to feed me and chat. While I was in the hospital, my parents visited too. I had little contact with them, so I didn't know what to talk about. Every time they would bring up Jonathan, and after a few days of not seeing him, they stopped coming. I was discharged after 16 days. Ethan, who was bored with being alone, was also discharged and drove me home. As I got out of the car, he tapped my forehead with his finger. "Your uncle is getting married. If you feel uncomfortable living at the Hales and don't want to go back to your families, tell me. I'll arrange a place for you to live. Don't keep everything to yourself, you hear?" "Yeah, I know. By the way, I have time now. I can start preparing the wedding dress and suit designs you wanted. Do you have any preferences?" Ethan raised his eyebrow. "No, as long as you like them, they'll be perfect." I nodded and had him stop a couple 100 meters from the Hales. Jonathan didn't like me being too close with others regardless of gender. And I never went against his wishes. Ethan got out of the car, opened the door for me and leaned against the door, complaining, "Don't just focus on one person, pay attention to other people." Ethan spoke so softly that I didn't hear him. "What?" "Nothing. I've put $5,200,000 into your account for the wedding outfits. The handmade design fees aren't necessary. We can deduct another $2 million. "No way. If you don't accept the money, who am I going to spend it on?" Ethan got back in the car and closed the door. I waved goodbye to him. As I approached the house, I could hear his car drive away. It was like how it has always been since we met. He always watched me leave. I hesitated before finally going in. The servants were busy. They greeted me and went back to work. The interior and exterior of the villa had completely changed. It felt extremely unfamiliar. The lilies and peonies I loved were gone, and the vases were all filled with roses. The paintings I had carefully selected, the ornaments on the shelves, the tables, chairs, and even the curtains, everything that could be replaced was gone. From the owner to the house itself, everything was repelling this outsider me. Mia came down the stairs and apologized to me. "I'm sorry, Ball, Jonathan and I have been busy preparing for our engagement recently, and didn't have time to visit you. And this is the wedding house, so I thought it should be renovated. Do you mind?" "It's okay, I don't mind." I paused for a moment before replying. They were getting engaged after less than a month of dating? That was fast. I remembered how Jonathan had once said that he might never get married. My heart felt like it had been stabbed. Jonathan came out at this time. Mia glanced at him sheepishly. He smiled and flicked her nose. If you want something, just ask for it yourself. Ball is very easygoing. Mia then bit her lip and walked over to me. Ball, I've seen your wedding dress designs. I love them. Can I have them? Hearing this, I turned my head abruptly to look at Jonathan. It felt like my throat was being strangled by an invisible hand. Those designs were the result of 4.5 years of work, kept in the drawer of my room. I had told Jonathan more than once that I wanted to wear a wedding dress designed by me when I married him. He couldn't have forgotten. And he knew that I didn't like anyone going into my room without permission. However, Jonathan only smiled at me. I know that darling put a lot of effort into those designs. Your aunt and I won't treat you unfairly. We'll pay you the fee of a top designer and leave the production to you. His voice was extremely gentle, but it made my chest heavy. I didn't want to give my hard work to someone else, so I finally mustered up the courage to refuse. But before I could say a word, Jonathan said, Darling, Mia and I are getting married soon. She will be your aunt. Don't do anything to make her sad, okay? His pupils reflected my pale face. Looking at him, the courage I had mustered up faded. Okay. There's no need for the money. Consider them as a wedding gift for you and my aunt. Even if I loved him before, I decided to give up at that moment. I didn't want to lose the last bit of respect I had, along with my love. Then thank you, darling. Jonathan ruffled my hair, with his usual gentle and soft expression, as if he had never been close to me. I stood in the place where I had lived for nearly 20 years, and felt out of place. At that moment I suddenly realized that no matter how hard I tried to hold on, I was going to be abandoned by my second family. I wasn't suited to stay here any longer, and once I had decided to move out, I knew I should at least tell Jonathan, since he had taken care of me for so many years. However, I was interrupted by Mia several times when I tried to bring it up at dinner. After dinner, I went to find Jonathan, but Mia was the one who opened the door. She was wearing barely their pieces of fabric that made her look very embarrassed. Jonathan's showering, did you need something? I was exceptionally awkward. It's nothing, I said before hurrying away. I had intended to talk to him the next morning, but after I got up the maid told me, Mr. Hale has gone on a business trip, and Miss Mia has gone with him. They won't be back until the day before the engagement. Even if I were slow on the uptake, I realized that Mia was somewhat hostile towards me, and that Jonathan was deliberately avoiding me because of her. I didn't try to cling to him anymore. But after editing it dozens of times, I sent Jonathan a message telling him that I was moving out. He didn't reply. Scrolling up in the chat window, I could see that before, he had always told me to wear more clothes, drink more water, and not to overwork myself, and I'd reply with an okay. But he hadn't taken the initiative to message me in a long time. Only my words lay forlornly on one side of the screen. Instead, Mia sent me a message. Ball. There are some things I'm embarrassed to say to your face, but I don't want to keep them inside. On the day I saw your wedding dress designs, I also saw your diary. I understand that you like Jonathan. Someone as outstanding as him will have more than just one admirer. But we're getting married soon. I'll cherish you as much as he does, but I can't accept the fact that a woman who likes my fiancé is constantly around us. You understand, right? After having her read my diary and having stolen the wedding dresses I had painstakingly designed, Mia should have been the one feeling ashamed. But the truth was, it was I who felt awkward and embarrassed. I felt like I'd been stripped naked and thrown out onto the street. I replied, forcing myself to endure the humiliation. I will move out. Mia. If Jonathan asks about the reason, please don't mention me. You wouldn't want us to argue because of you, would you? Okay. I put down my phone and went back to my room to pull out my diary. 17 years had only filled one thin volume. I looked through the diary, feeling a pang of sadness, and my nose began to sting. But the swing that Jonathan made for me, the souvenirs he brought back from our trips, the clay sculpture he taught me to make, all were gone. I burned the diary and called Ethan to help me move. All the luxury bags, limited edition clothes, and jewelry were sold, and I put the money into a bank account. Added to the money I had made from selling my designs over the past few years, it amounted to over 30 million, which was enough to repay Jonathan. I'd never even used the black card he had given me. I put both cards in an envelope, asked the maid to give them to Jonathan, and then with a small suitcase, moved into the wedding dress design studio that Ethan and I had opened. It was winter break now, and apart from eating and sleeping, I spent all my time working on the formal wear for Mia and Jonathan. Ethan, seeing me so busy, furrowed his brows as if trying to kill a fly. "What are you pushing yourself so hard for? You've already lost 5 pounds in 3 days, and you barely have any meat on your bones to begin with. My uncle and aunt's engagement and wedding dates are too close together. If I'm too slow, they won't have them on time. Why worry about them? If they're in such a hurry, they can go to someone else. But Aunt likes my wedding dress designs, and I promised them both." Since being brought to live with the Hales when I was 6, Jonathan had been the only one making sacrifices for me. If he made one request for me, I couldn't refuse. Ethan, seeing how persistent I was, reluctantly stayed and worked overtime with me. Besides running the business of the studio, he was also my assistant. But he was different from Jonathan. Jonathan's emotions were never shown on his face. Regardless of the situation, he always wore a gentle smile. Even after being with him for almost 20 years, I still couldn't tell what he was thinking most of the time. But Ethan was the complete opposite. He never tried to hide his happiness or anger. Lately, his mouth looked like he'd swallowed a jar of oil. When I worked, I would get completely immersed and ignore everything around me. But because of the recent events, I couldn't ignore Ethan's feelings. Ouch! I accidentally pricked my finger with the needle. A drop of blood appeared. I winced in pain. Ethan quickly grabbed an alcohol swab and took care of it. "What's the matter with you? Are you distracted? How did you get stabbed by a needle?" Watching him treat my wound, I felt a lump in my throat. I had parents and a younger brother, but I had left home 17 years ago and we rarely saw each other. We were worse than strangers. Jonathan and Ethan were the people closest to me. Now Jonathan had found someone he loved and was already distancing himself from me. Would Ethan also do the same one day? Just thinking about it made me anxious and apprehensive. I had been holding back for a few days, but I couldn't help but ask, "Ethan, when you get a girlfriend, will our relationship also grow distant?" Ethan glared at me. "Don't worry, that day won't come because the person I like is you. I've liked you for 7 years, and I don't expect that to change in the future." I was stunned. "You like me?" "Yes, everyone who knows us can see it except for you. Even your dear uncle could tell, or else why would he be so guarded against me? So you don't have to worry about me not paying attention to you. It's only if you don't want me." After Ethan said all of that so casually, he added jokingly, "Of course, if you're still worried, you can consider being my girlfriend." His sudden confession left my mind spinning. But I have someone else in my heart. That's not fair to you." "So you're really considering accepting me?" Ethan immediately jumped up, fighting back a grin. He put his hands on his knees and bent down to meet my gaze. In his eyes, I could see my reflection. "I don't care about what's fair. I just want you to give me a chance. Let me replace that person in your heart. They say that the best way to forget someone is to start a new relationship." I was moved by his suggestion. "I'll consider it." Just by saying "I'll consider it," Ethan became so happy he couldn't control it. He picked me up and twirled me around before setting me down. Even when working, he was more active. The day before Jonathan and Mia's engagement, the engagement evening gowns were finally completed. I had also finally made up my mind. "Ethan, I'm willing to be your girlfriend, and I will try my best to fall in love with you." Ethan went crazy with joy. He picked me up and put me on his shoulders. "Put me down." My vision suddenly changed and I clung to him, afraid of falling. When Ethan saw that I was uncomfortable, he changed to carrying me in his arms. He just wouldn't let go. He held me so tightly and was so excited that I could feel the vibration of his chest when he spoke. "Ball, do you know how long I've been waiting for today? You don't need to try hard to love me. I'm already so happy as long as you give me a chance." Ethan's joy infected me. I hugged his neck and couldn't help but smile. I also wanted to try a sweet romance, and not an unrequited love that could be thrown into chaos by a single person or phrase. Ethan looked down at me, held me on the sofa and snapped a picture, then posted it as a 9-picture post on his social media. He captioned it, "7 years of unrequited love became real." Our picture was in the center, surrounded by single shots of me at different times. I had no idea when he had taken so many. I wasn't one to share my life on social media, but I didn't want to make Ethan feel neglected. I liked his post and then also posted our photo. Boyfriend. As soon as the post was made, Jonathan sent me a message. What boyfriend? Are you playing a dare game with the Reed kid? I'm not playing a dare game. I'm dating him. Ball? Being with someone on a whim is not fair to someone who likes you. It's not impulsive. I want to try with Ethan. If things go well, we will get married. Jonathan didn't reply again. I closed the chat window and called Ethan to go with me to the Hales to deliver the outfits. Mia saw the dresses, tried them on, and smiled until her eyes narrowed. But Jonathan didn't even look at his suit, much less try it on. He only looked at my hand and Ethan's, which were tightly entwined. His lips curved, but his eyes showed no trace of a smile. After getting a boyfriend, you want to settle the financial accounts and move out. Do you want to cut all ties with me and become strangers? Jonathan held up the 2 bank cards I had left him and tossed them onto the table. He was clearly angry. In the past, I would have analyzed his meaning and then done as he wished. But this time I only explained seriously. Uncle will always be my elder, that will never change. But I'm dating now and Uncle is getting married. It's best if I move out for my own convenience. Jonathan. Young people's relationships never last long. If you move in together, the breakup will only be uglier. That won't happen. I've only liked Ball. If she's willing, I'll stay by her side forever. As for you, Mr. Hale, your engagement to Miss Mia is tomorrow. You should be focusing on that instead of worrying about me and Ball. Ethan handed him the suit. Ball and I have to go see a movie. We won't bother you anymore. He hadn't mentioned going to a movie before. I glanced at him in surprise, but I didn't call him out. I simply said goodbye to Jonathan and Mia, and walked out with him. Jonathan suddenly stopped me. Ball. He always called me darling, and would only call me Ball if he was extremely angry. I paused and corrected him. Uncle, I have a name, it's Evelyn Shun. When I had arrived at the Hales when I was 6 years old, Jonathan had casually called me Ball, and my name had been changed. Everyone in the circle followed suit and called me Ball, even my parents. But I'd always had a name. I was Evelyn Shun, not Ball. I was a person, not a pet. Is there anything you wanted to say, Uncle? I asked. Jonathan's gaze was deep and his voice low. I'm getting engaged tomorrow. I remember. Ethan and I will be there tomorrow. Seeing that he had nothing else to say, I said goodbye to him and Mia, and left with Ethan. Ethan said he wanted to see a movie, but in reality he brought me back to the studio so I could choose my outfit for the next day. There was a row of designer dresses all in my size. Looking at the dresses, I was stunned. When did you make all these dresses and how come I didn't know? Ethan pouted. I've liked you for so many years, yet you don't know it. Hurry and see if there's anything you like. If not, it's okay, I have a lot more in my closet at home, which I had ordered from other designers for you. Which one do you want me to wear? I asked. You can wear whatever you like. It doesn't matter what I like. In the past years, Jonathan had arranged all my food, clothes, accommodation, and travel. The only choice I actively made was to major in fashion design. Now suddenly, Ethan was telling me to choose. I was somewhat unaccustomed to it, but I was happy nonetheless. I chose a backless purple evening gown. I'd never worn such a bright color before, nor had I worn something so sexy. I was uneasy in it. Ethan was thrilled. He kept saying how beautiful I was and taking photos from all angles and posting them on social media. My girlfriend is gorgeous. Jonathan made a rare appearance on social media and commented, this color and style is not suitable for her. I'll have someone deliver a dress for her later. Ethan replied, Mr. Hale is probably old and doesn't have the same taste as us young people. I think she looks amazing. And most importantly, Evelyn likes it. In the end, Jonathan still sent a few dresses over. He messaged me. That dress isn't suitable for you. You can choose one of the dresses that I had delivered. Jonathan had always had a good eye, but I still wore the purple one to the engagement party the next day. Ethan wore a matching purple suit to match. His parents said that it was too flashy and he looked like a peacock, but he refused to change. But whether or not he changed didn't matter anymore. The engagement was cancelled. Mia called me crying, You won, Ball. I didn't understand what she was talking about, but after hanging up, she blocked me. Jonathan called me. Darling, I'm not getting married. Move back home. No, I think it's better living outside, I said and waited for a while. When he didn't say anything else, I hung up. The next day, Ethan took me to the amusement park and we spent the whole day having fun. Jonathan said girls should be quiet and well-behaved, and apart from rides like carousels, I had never done anything else. I thought I wouldn't like it, but it turned out that Ethan cried on the roller coaster, and although I wasn't used to it at first, I ended up laughing with my arms spread out in the wind. Even when we went home, I still felt like I hadn't had enough. Shall we go again tomorrow? I said, excited. Ethan slumped onto my shoulder looking downcast. Honey, can you have a little pity on me? He started nibbling on my neck. I shrank away, pushing him, and laughed. Stop messing around, that tickles. We said that we were dating, but our relationship was pretty much the same as it always was. Sometimes Ethan would hold my hand, put his arm around my waist, or hug me, but he wouldn't do anything overly intimate. If I showed even the slightest discomfort, he would immediately notice and wouldn't make me uncomfortable in the least. We were joking around when we got to the studio door. In the dim evening light, a Rolls-Royce was parked there. Jonathan's tall figure was leaning against the car, a cigarette between his fingers, its light flickering. Uncle, why are you here? When I saw him, I stopped joking around and instinctively adopted a ladylike demeanor in front of him. Jonathan put out his cigarette. I couldn't see the expression in his eyes, but I could hear his slightly hoarse voice. I came to take you home. Ethan pinched my waist, clearly upset, but didn't overstep by making the decision for me. I grabbed his wandering hand and smiled gently. I'm not going back, Uncle. After all, we aren't blood related. It would cause gossip if we lived too close, which wouldn't be good for either of us. Jonathan looked at me. He didn't say anything else before getting into the car and driving away. Not long after, my parents came to find me. Ball, do you think you should move back into the Hales? Jonathan has been so good to you, we can't be ungrateful. That's right, Ball. Besides, our family still has a lot to rely on Mr. Hale for you. I interrupted them, my voice strained. Mom and Dad, do you even remember that my name is Evelyn Shen? Other people called me Ball, but why did they have to call me that too? They were silent. I smiled bitterly. What you have gained from me all these years, isn't that enough? Finally, they still had some shame and left with red faces. Before New Year's Eve, Jonathan got sick, seriously ill. I knew that whether it was my parents coming to find me, or him getting sick, he was forcing me to go to him. But I still went. Before I left, Ethan tried to say something several times but couldn't get the words out. He always said what was on his mind, so it was rare to see him so hesitant. I chuckled. Just because I'm going to see an elder doesn't mean I'm not your girlfriend. Why are you so nervous? Then I'll wait for you to come back and celebrate the new year with me. Okay. I went to the Hales. Jonathan was in bed and had lost a lot of weight in just a few days. His eyes were dark and unfocused as he looked at me. If I wasn't sick, would you not have come back to see me on New Year's Eve? How could that be? Jonathan's eyes lit up. I handed him a glass of water. Uncle is an elder. Regardless, I must come and visit you during the new year. His eyes immediately dimmed. Darling, you said before that you liked me. I've been thinking about it. I interrupted him. Just like Uncle said, I was young and ignorant at that time. Luckily, Uncle didn't take me seriously. What if I said I regretted it? People always like to think crazy thoughts when they're sick. Once you get better, you won't have those nonsensical thoughts. After Jonathan had rejected me, I did still have some unrealistic expectations, always thinking that one day he might accept me. But during my time with Ethan, I suddenly realized Jonathan had always been good to me, but in the way someone would care for a pet, with meticulous attention to detail. Because I was a pet, there was no need to consider my feelings. He'd planned to marry Mia even when he knew I was sad. He still went through with it. No matter how sad a pet was, it would never leave its owner. But I had always been a person. Jonathan didn't press the matter further. He knew that if we continued, we would lose the last of what we had. Neither of us spoke. Silence didn't feel awkward before, but now the silence felt unbearable. I sat for a while, reminding Jonathan to rest and get better. Happy New Year, Uncle. I promised Ethan we would celebrate the new year together, so I'll head back first. Jonathan looked at me, as if he had 1,000 things he wanted to say. But in the end he simply said, "Okay, Happy New Year, darling." I had been dating Ethan for 3 years, and I couldn't say exactly when I fell in love with him. It was only one day that I realized I no longer thought about Jonathan, and that my heart was completely filled with Ethan. When he leaned in to kiss me, I didn't resist, my heart would just beat like a drum. When I saw him walking with another woman, I would also feel a bit jealous. He became my muse, and when I designed suits, I couldn't help but imagine what he would look like wearing them. I had made many plans for the future, and he was included in every one of them. So when Ethan got down on one knee and proposed to me, I didn't hesitate to hold out my hand and smile. "Yes, I will." When we got married, I invited Jonathan. He said he was busy with work and couldn't come, but he did send me 1 billion in assets as a wedding gift. It happened to snow on our wedding day. When Ethan held me in his arms as I was wearing my wedding dress, I saw a tall figure standing far away, the black coat and hair covered in snow. It looked like Jonathan. When I looked back again, I could no longer see him. I soon didn't have time to think about it. Ethan put me in his sports car, happily settling himself into the driver's seat. "Hold on tight, wifey. Time to go on our honeymoon." The end.